Hello YouTube, this is Sam Gerrans from Qur'anite.com. Today is Wednesday the 5th of August 2020 and I'm continuing my sort of series of antidotes to the world psychosis and training into submission and obedience by not really talking about that. I think there's enough of that everywhere else, and this is certainly not a positivity channel. I think we're all more about realism here than anything else. Real realism, not sort of pragmatism, but actual realism, taking into consideration not only the affairs of this life, but of the life to come also. And with that in view, I'm going to read something from the next surah of in this series that I'm reading, which started at 50, and I'm just going to sort of just take snippets, take bits from each surah as we work through over the coming weeks, whilst I'm continuing with editing and stuff like that. And also, before I forget, thank you very much to those people who wished me all the best with my health and various things going with my back. As I mentioned last time, I am now sort of undergoing a series of, I suppose you'd call it physiotherapy. But it's exercises, a regime of which is rebuilding the muscles that support my spine, which is because I've had such a sort of sedentary life, spent so much time at computers, basically, especially over the last 6 or 7 years, but even before that. That's the actual reason for all of this, and so I'm just doing that, I think 3 days a week, and it's really helping. So that's that, and thank you for various suggestions. But I'm going to stick with what the advice that I've been given, and I wish there was just sort of like a powder you could take and fix it, but I don't think it's like that. This is a very common thing, I think, with so many people now with these sedentary jobs. And just to go back to my sort of opening statement, as this new normal is rolled out, everyone is going to be increasingly at home, interacting with screens. I absolutely hate it. I mean, if it was at all possible, I'd get away from screen altogether. Over the next few months, I don't think that is possible. But that's my goal, is at some point to sort of at least get this down to almost nothing. But we're not there yet. And so what I would like to do is to read something from the current edition of the Qur'an, A Complete Revelation. If you're watching this anytime after, I guess, October, whenever it is, the next and I hope final edition is going to be released. So there may be some minor differences there, but they're going to be very minor. And I'm looking at Surah 57, and I'm going to start around I'm going to start at verse 20 and just read through till about 23 and kind of riff on certain thoughts as we go. Because when I read the Qur'an, I have several sort of modes of reading, as does everyone. I mean, if you think about reading, if you read a comic book, that's one type of reading. If you read a work-related email, that's another type of reading. If you read a contract, that's a different type of reading. But then there's reading of scripture. And actually, for me, even with just reading of scripture, there are different types of reading, because I read it as an editor, I read it as a translator, I read it as a thinker, I read it as a believer, I read it as as a person who's learner. So and I'm not alone in that. I mean, we all come to scripture with different modes of reading, and it's as well to be aware of those modes when you come to scripture, because I think that we are meant to reflect on what we read, and it doesn't mean that every thought is as valid as every other thought. I mean, I get a lot of mail, and some of it is people's thoughts, and reflections is perhaps too deep a word for it, but just stuff that's blowing through breezes blowing through their minds, and they feel the need to share those things. It doesn't mean that those things are without validity. It's just that there are certain things that you can share with other people and to benefit them, and there are certain things that perhaps are just for you, just for now. But an engaged and reflective reading of the Qur'an is really our bread and butter. As Jesus is as quoted as saying in the Gospels, man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that cometh out of the mouth of God. And, people sometimes feel that their iman or their faith is weak. Well, the reason for that is because you don't spend enough time reading the Qur'an. And if you do spend time reading the Qur'an, a very common mistake, in my opinion, is to concentrate, especially for those who can access the Arabic, is to read in a way which emphasizes pronunciation and prolongation of certain vowels over reflection. This is a mistake, in my opinion. I mean, to be fair to the traditionalist, I'm very glad that they have developed a science of reciting the Qur'an in a way which has tended towards its safekeeping. But really, the idea of taqleed, and taqleed being sort of imitation, which has become so really embedded in the Muslim culture, if you think of the word bid'ah, like bid'ah is innovation. Anybody coming with anything new, this will, this can get your throat cut in certain places. So there is a culture of anti-thinking. For myself, not coming from an Islamic culture, this was an eye-opener to me when I did encounter it. But having encountered it, I wasn't really very interested in it, other than to think, well, this is obviously why you got stuck 500 years ago, whatever it was. I can think, and I do think, and I kind of encourage other people to do the same. And I think that on this channel there are quite a lot of people who do that. I do think there are not all perceptions of Quranic texts are equal. There has to be some way of sifting through and systematizing and assessing, interpretation, exegesis on some basis of criteria, of objective criteria, and to some extent, I hope to some large extent, that my work has contributed to presenting an example of that. But my view of it is, it's not that everything is subjective and it could mean this, it could mean that, it could mean the other. No, there are very clear kind of foundational postulates within the Qur'an which are absolutely clear. But there are other expressions and phrases and so on which are not so clear. I stick to the things that are clear, and I'll reflect upon the things that are not so clear. But I do think that we are able to, if we wish to, especially given that the Qur'an is a closed circuit, there's no more text out there. It's just this text. It's just these 114 surahs, that it is possible to analyze and draw inferences with levels of certainty using what I use, which is an inductive form of logic. I think that this is a science which, or a way of approaching the Qur'an, which is not unique. It's not unique to me, certainly. But I think that had rather been ground out of any kind of Islamic culture. And just in case you don't know the difference between inductive and deductive logic, I had to learn the difference recently in regards to trying to explain something to people who are very good at deductive logic, in fact, programmers, mathematicians, and realizing that they couldn't understand, they couldn't grasp the merits of inductive logic. And the difference is, with deductive logic, something can be shown to be true. For example, all men die. Socrates is a man, therefore Socrates will die. If the premises are correct, if the first two bits are correct, if your setup is correct, if those two things are correct, the conclusion will be correct. It will be. And it will be 100% correct. You can know this. However, there's such a thing as inductive logic, which we use all the time. It's just that by inductive logic, it's not possible to prove something definitively, but you're able to acquire a very high level of probability. For example, the sun has risen every single day of my life, therefore the sun will rise tomorrow. Now, you cannot prove 100% that the sun will rise tomorrow morning. You can't prove it. You can't prove it in the way that you can prove that Socrates will die. You can't prove it to that extent. And to somebody who's trained in deductive logic, that to them is they can't get their brain around that. However, we have enough evidence given our experience to make that conclusion, for that to be a reasonable conclusion. Another example would be courts of law. Courts of law work on inductive logic. You work, it's a reasonable proof, a reasonable assumptions based on the evidence. And we base our lives on these things. Now, this inductive logic which can be systematized to a certain extent, but cannot be claimed to be fully watertight, was developed or made into sort of a thing by somebody called Francis Bacon, an Englishman, who really kind of pulled away the carpet under the legs of the Aristotelian idea of deductive logic, which had stood since the time of Aristotle. But we use inductive logic in our in science. We use it in decisions we make about whether to take an umbrella when we go outside. We use it all of the time. Most of us use it more than we use it in other cases. However, when it comes to exegesis or understanding texts, for some reason, what's happened historically is that people like to turn to precedents. They like to claim authorities rather than collecting evidence and presenting that evidence. And anyone can say, well, you can't definitively say that this is the case. When we're talking about inductive logic, that's perhaps true, but it is true also of saying that the sun tomorrow. If you make the claim that the sun's going to rise tomorrow. So it depends on what your level of what your threshold of proof is. For me, the fact that the sun has risen every single day of my life is enough for me that all things being equal, the sun will rise tomorrow, unless the end comes in the meantime. I don't have a doubt about it, and I will put, I'll bet money on it with anybody who wishes to do that. It's going to rise tomorrow, and only a complete, well, I was going to say a complete fool, but very few people would say that there was any doubt about that. So all that to say is that there is a whole area of understanding the Qur'an which is based actually on reflection, information gathering, kind of processing that in a systematic way, and then coming to conclusions, although they do not meet the test of deductive logic, they do meet the test of acceptable evidence. Now, I'm going to give you sort of some thoughts as I go through here, which is at, as I say, sort of 57, and it's verse 20. And the reason why I'm mentioning this and why I like this is, well, I mean, I like it anyway, but is in the light of what's going on now. It's very easy to get caught up in the stampede of fear and submission to the God of government, which is what's actually happening, and to forget the broader perspective. And this isn't an appeal to positivism. On my part, it's an appeal to reality, because the virus may or may not exist. There may be a high likelihood or a low likelihood that it exists. But we do know for a fact that it's being hyped up beyond all imagining. And we do know for an even greater fact that we will die. That we do know. So whether that happens today or tomorrow or the next day is really just a matter of degree. The fact of it is going to happen. If we go back to our deductive logic, we know for a fact that we are going to die. And from the Quranic point of view, we know that we are going to face God. And so whether this happens today or tomorrow is I mean, I'm not saying it's a matter of indifference to us, but it's philosophically, almost logically, it is a matter of indifference, because we know it's going to happen. And viruses and governments and persecutions and tyrannies and fear and all the rest of it makes no difference to that basic algorithm. It's going to happen. Okay. So verse 20. Know that the life of this world is but play, and diversion, and adornment, and mutual boasting among you, and competition for increase in wealth and children. Just going to stop there. This world, this life, it's these things. It's play. This is a game. It's a bit of a joke. I mean, it seems very serious, and especially if you're living in the West, it seems to have become more serious recently. But it doesn't say anything about COVID-19 in any of this changing this algorithm. Know that the life of this world it's just play. It is but a game, okay? And a diversion. It's a distraction. And adornment. Adornment, just dressing itself up in finery. And mutual boasting between you or among you. You know that's true. Just think of your life. Mutual boasting. And competition for increase in wealth and children. That is what it is, and this is not a dependent statement. This is an objective statement. Like the example of a rain, it impresses the atheists with its growth. Now, the word here, atheists, al-kuffar, often is translated as the ungrateful, or the deniers, but I think the atheist is correct. If you think about it, atheists, people who reject the notion of God or any sense of duty or beholden to God, when stuff comes, there's some sort of, whether it's money or it's this or it's that, some kind of harvest, they're impressed with it. Oh, great, here we go. Okay. Then it withers, and thou seest it turn to yellow. Then it becomes chaff. So this is really Ecclesiastes, isn't it? That vanity, vanity, all is vanity, saith the preacher. And what is your life? It is but a vapour. And this is true. It appears to be. A really good thing to do is, I'm sure everyone spends a lot of time on YouTube. Look up some people who are dead, who are famous. Big famous people, and how Marilyn Monroe, Elvis Presley, or whoever it is, and just see stuff that was made at the time of how they were treated, how they were fated, everything seemed to be so important and around these people, or whoever it is, old man Rockefeller or whoever, doesn't matter. And consider now that those people are now dead, so their harvest, it bloomed, it had its day, and now it's gone. Then it withers, and thou seest it turn to yellow. Then it becomes chaff. And in the hereafter is severe punishment, and forgiveness, and good pleasure from God. Now, this is the actual truth. Whether viruses are true or they're not true, or whoever it is running, the New World Order, and how many millions and billions they're planning to do nasty things to, no matter. This is the truth. Everyone is going here. This is reality, you see, and all the rest of this is, as we say, play, diversion, adornment, mutual boasting. And one thing I did learn is, in my time, in my professional career, before I gave that up to do this, is when you're around exceptionally wealthy people, and you hear them boasting. I mean, and they have one sort of genre of boasting, and then let's say you're at the market or something, and just some guy's selling something at the back of his Ford Escort, and you hear a different type of boasting. The mechanism is completely the same. It's all to do with, I suppose, trying to evoke a sense of envy in the hearers, a sense of trying to establish one's own significance. But whether it's how many private jets you own, or how many baseball cards you've got, the mechanism is the same. I remember going to it was a car boot sale. That's right. I went to a car boot sale once. Car boot sales, if you're in America, I'm sure you have them, but they'll be called something slightly different, I'm sure. But basically, people come and sell their goods out of the backs of their cars. And I went to one of these places, and it was very interesting because all of the avarice and greed that you get on the stock exchange was exactly there. It was the same. It's just the kind of the form was slightly different, but the actual content was exactly the same. And I remember coming away and thinking, this was mammon for losers. In a way, just to kind of riff on this theme. Isn't it terrible? I mean, when we think about people going to hell, and we think about people going to the fire, and we think about the evildoers and so on, it's very easy to think of people who are fabulously wealthy and so on. But actually, there are some fabulously wealthy people who are good people. It is possible. But what about being poor and having a poor, miserable life, caught up in materialism and avarice and hatred and distrust, and then going to hell? There's something about that just seems to be almost unthinkably horrible. Nothing here and nothing there. It's the double whammy. And in the hereafter is severe punishment and forgiveness and good pleasure from God. So that is what we're all going to. Those are the options: severe punishment and forgiveness on the one hand, and good pleasure from God. So that's the major fork in the road. That's what's going to happen, and that's forever, as I was saying in my last video. And the life of this world is only the enjoyment of deception. And that word deception is also translated as delusion. It's a delusion. Our life is a delusion. It's just, what is it? It's but a vapor, and it's gone, you see. And all of this fear-based stuff, you hear a lot of people sort of trying to pretend it's not happening, or they're trying to, when enough people wake up. That's one of my personal bugbears. This is such a sort of straw man argument and ludicrous. Because it's based in the same sort of lies, democracy, that the more people who understand something or think something's true, the truer it is, gives it more force, more reality. Well, that's not true at all. What is true is that one man in God is a majority, as it were. You just want to be where the truth is, and it's never going to be a popular proposition, or it certainly hasn't been historically. And if you look at it from the Quranic point of view, I think the one thing you can say is that consistently across history, siding with truth has been singularly unpopular. Verse 21. That was just one verse, so I'm going to try and get through this a bit quick. 21. Compete for forgiveness from your Lord, and a garden the breadth whereof is as the breadth of the sky and the earth, prepared for those who believe in God and his messengers. That is the bounty of God, which he gives to whom he wills. Now, prepared for those who believe in God and his messengers. Now, a lot of people claim to believe in God and his messengers, but really what one believes in is what one bases one's life upon. And what we know that Muhammad received the Qur'an. We know that. We do know that. And we know it because the Qur'an is maintained and protected. You can analyze its contents, and I have spent the last 7 years really doing that, again on this inductive basis, building up evidence. And for myself, on the basis of the evidence that I have amassed and analyzed and looked at, I'm convinced that it is from God, it is protected. But I am also convinced that those who claim monopoly rights over it really don't appear to understand it. And it appears to me, in the majority of cases anyway, that their claims to follow the messengers would be better sort of expressed in terms of following certain imams, I would say. For example, Al-Bukhari. That would be a fair claim. But to say that things written in other literatures equate with following the messenger, that's just bait and switch, isn't it? I mean, you can learn that trick in going down the King's Road in the 1960s. Find a lady. It's just that. That is the bounty of God which he gives to whom he wills. And God is one possessing tremendous bounty. So whatever you put into it, you can be certain that God will reward you many times over. Because it can seem like a big thing to give up one's career or reputation or whatever it is. But again, to go back to what we know, these sort of the postulate is that we absolutely do know that, like Socrates, we are all human, therefore all humans die, therefore we will die. Deductively, we know this. It's only a matter of time, but we know we're going to what I call the zinger, in the butcher's shop, that sort of fluorescent light that draws flies towards it, and suddenly, there they go. We're all going towards that. That's absolutely that. Deductively is one. You can take that to the bank. Well, no, it's better than that. I mean, you could take it to a real bank. I don't know if we have many left of those. To continue, no misfortune befalls in the earth or in yourselves. There were no caveats here about viruses or tyrannies or anything like that. It just tells you, save is in a decree before we bring it into being. So who is above all things? Is it the government? Is it Bill Gates? Is it the New World Order? No, it's God. Save is in a decree before we bring it into being. That is easy for God. 23. That you grieve not over what eludes you, nor exult at what comes to you. And God loves not every egoist and boaster. And it continues. Now, I highly recommend that you read the whole of this sort of at your own leisure and think about what application it can have for you in your life at this time. You don't need to derive, principles and rules for everybody's lives, and to worry hugely whether or not it's going to be accepted in the in the rarefied atmosphere of certain academics and theologians and so on. Take what you understand and apply it to your situation and do the best you can with it. That seems to me that's a worthy and a decent way to approach something. If you want to take it further than that, it is possible, as I've demonstrated. I don't think definitively. What I've tried to do is demonstrate a methodology that can and should be improved upon. It is possible to build up proof, evidence based on the inductive method, and then, because the Qur'an is a closed system, what I'm saying is, there's a certain amount of letters and words in it. If somebody has the time and the ability to go through all of the evidence and cross-reference it all, I don't know how long that would take, but I'm sure it must be possible to draw even like deductive conclusions from it that hold, if they were properly constructed, that would actually be logically irrefutable. I'm not there yet. I don't know that it's necessary, but I can see that it might be possible. So this book will challenge you if you spend time with it. But you don't need to be a logician or a computer scientist or a theologian to take what you understand of it and apply it in your life. And that's really what I wanted to say to people. Don't let them spook you. What is deductively, absolutely, imperatively true and unavoidable is that we are all alive. We all have a duty to God, and we are all going to Him, including everybody behind all this stuff. And this is, as I said before, man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that cometh out of the mouth of God. This is our bread. This is our food. It's our sustenance. And I think at a time like this, we really need to go to it with that kind of intention to feed on it and apply it. And if you take a little and apply it, you'll see the fruits of it. And just ask yourself, how does this apply to my life? And if there are parts of it that you don't understand, or parts of it that are challenging to you, just leave them. Go to the bits that you can apply, and just try to master those so far as you're able. And that's my advice. So that's what I want to say. I hope everyone is well, and I hope to make another video in the next week, 10 days, out of my main task at the moment, which is just continuing with the last tranche of editing and then writing. But I am coming close to the end of that. I'll be very happy when I have, but not quite there yet. Anyway, that's all for now. If you're listening on YouTube, you can download my full translation of the Qur'an free using the button in the top right hand corner, or buy the hard copy there at 10% less than on Amazon. I also encourage you to sign up for the Qur'anite Plus newsletter on the site to get occasional micro updates. You can download the audio from my YouTube videos to your mobile device using the links in the drop down below. I recommend meetquranites.com to connect with other Qur'an alone believers. Like if you like, comment if you have something constructive to say, and subscribe to get more each week. And use the link in the drop down below to donate if you would like to help me keep doing this. And remember, this life is short, eternity is long. If you want good trees, plant good seeds.